This is going to be a demo on how to use build pipelines in OpenShift. This is Origin 1.5. So I'm just going to get right to it. I've got a CentOS 7 box here that I ran OC cluster up on, and now the web console is running, and that's about all I've done. I set up a user for myself since it's publicly accessible, and I didn't want the default allow anyone in authentication, but that's all I've really done. So I'm going to create a new project here, and we'll call it demo. And so I'm going to start out by creating the example Ruby application. I'm going to pause here. So this is where the example Ruby application is. I'm going to show how to use GitHub webhooks in combination with the pipeline. So what I'm going to do here is go ahead and clone this repository so that I can push to it and cause the webhook to trigger. So we're going to go to this repository. We're going to go fork that into my own account here. And then we are going to use this location. So we will paste that there. We'll call it Ruby example. And we're going to go into advanced options here because we're going to use a pipeline rather than the automatic build. So we need to disable automatic builds and automatic deployments. So we don't want a webhook, and we don't want it to launch automatically at creation time or when the image changes, because our Jenkins job is going to manually do these steps for us. So you can leave this one checked if you want. So we're going to do create here. We go back to demo, and you can see here that rather than jumping right into the build, it's created all of our stuff, but there's no pods running and there's no build running either, because we've set it to all run manually. So if you go under the builds tab, you can see pipelines here, and here you see create sample pipeline. This is really a template for kind of a proof of concept as far as pipelines are concerned, but there isn't anything in the UI for creating your own pipelines. So I'm going to create that just using raw YAML, and so we'll walk through that real quick. So I'm just going to paste this in here and then kind of walk through it. So our pipeline is going to be a build config, just because you can chain build configs, and build configs can trigger other ones. And the type of this, rather than being source, which is what it would normally be for the Ruby example application if you just deployed it from the the templates that come with OpenShift, this would be source, and it would just target the GitHub repository, and whenever it changed, if it got a notification via webhook, then we'd rebuild. Here we want the pipeline to do all that stuff. So what we've got here is a pipeline called Ruby example pipeline. This annotation here, it took me a little while to figure this out, but this connects the UI to, let's see if we can get back. So if you see here, it says start deployment on this button. This annotation causes the pipeline to be linked to that deployment config, and after that, it will know that the deployment, the deployment pipeline is being managed by this build config, and so it kind of links them together. Here, I've got a trigger defined. It's a GitHub type, and this is the secret. We'll use it later when we're registering our webhook with GitHub. And then here's the real thing: the pipeline itself, strategy type Jenkins pipeline. And then this Jenkins file, which uses an OpenShift plugin in Jenkins to call into the build and deployment triggers. And so basically this is doing exactly what a source builds, a source strategy here would do, only it's doing manually as part of a Jenkins job. And then of course you can expand this Jenkins file to include other steps depending on your application or what you want done in your pipeline. So I'm going to go ahead and create this here. And that does a few things. You can see that this button has switched to start pipeline instead of start deployment. And that comes from that annotation that was in the pipeline build config. And down here, because we created a build config that uses the Jenkins strategy, excuse me, it is deploying Jenkins for us using a template. So it takes a little while for Jenkins to come up, depending on how fast your box is. Let's see where this is. Okay, so it's coming up. The template has a readiness probe on it. So until the login prompt responds, this will not show as ready. It shows as not ready. So we'll just wait for that. If we go into the builds tab under pipelines, you can see that we have our Ruby example pipeline now. And if we click on that, you can click start pipeline, which does the same thing as the button on the dashboard. You can also edit your Jenkins file that was in raw YAML before. It's a lot easier to edit here now. And then you can also take a look at the raw YAML that we typed in from the beginning, and the Jenkins file gets updated in the spec here if you change it in that other panel. So if I go back to the overview, let's see if our Jenkins is up. If I click on that, that will take us in here. Now, the Jenkins that it spins up inside OpenShift is designed to link OAuth credentials into OpenShift, so you can use the same login that you used to log into the web console here. So I can type so it's still coming up. So let's see. Okay, so we're in the Jenkins dashboard here, and you can see our demo project Ruby example pipeline job here has been automatically created. This one is created by default. You can, if you care, you can knock it out. So this hasn't run yet. So we can trip this manually by hitting start pipeline. Now when you do that, you can see the pipeline appears inline on the dashboard above the application. So this is kind of like showing that it's building. If we go to view logs, it's going to dump us into Jenkins and show us the output from the build container, the STI builder. So you can see the build was successful. It's pushed to the internal registry, and now it's running the deployment. And now we have one pod, and deploy application should register that this has been deployed. And now the whole thing is complete. If we click on our pipeline, we can see that those two steps were complete. And if we go into our edit, you can see that those were the two stages of our pipeline. So now the next thing to do is we forked this repository. So let's go ahead. Let's register the webhook here so that we can trip that pipeline just by committing to this repository. So we're going to go in here to add webhook, and so this URL isn't easy to come by for the pipeline, but this is the standard URL format for webhooks with build config. So this is namespaces, the project name, the resource type is build configs, Ruby example pipeline is the build config webhooks, and then this secret here is the one that is in Ruby example pipeline. Look at the YAML right here in our triggers. So this needs to match the secret in the URL here. And for OpenShift, it passes this secret as part of the endpoint itself, and so there is no secret here. I changed this to JSON. Should be asking me. Okay, well, we'll go ahead and create this. And that failed because we're using a self-signed certificate, and this is HTTPS. So we need to disable SSL verification. Okay. Update the webhook. We can come down here and say redeliver the test. And we get a response, 200. Awesome. So that means that our webhook is contacting the OpenShift endpoint properly. So now that we've got the webhook there, we can come over here and do a git clone of our repository here. We'll go in here, get the one where we can write to it. Copy that. All right. Now we can go in here and make some change. Okay, so I'm just looking for the title line in this. If we go into our Ruby example application here, you can see the top line is welcome to our Ruby application. So let's say with more awesome. All right, we look at our diff there, and we'll just do commit all message more awesome, and then we'll do a git push. Now we're looking at this, right? Our webhook hits, GitHub notifies us, and our pipeline's running. So now we've got the build image running, and if we want to look at the logs, you can jump into Jenkins, you can see that it's running here. And if we scroll up here, you can see my commit here, more awesome. That's the latest commit, right? So it jumped right into it. Now it's deploying the application. If we jump over to the dashboard fast enough, well, it's already done. So there you go. And if we go to our application now, you can see with more awesome. So that's how you can do webhooks with pipelines and OpenShift.